I'll pay the $10.
You need a PDF for it?
No, I got it.
Okay.
You stop, but I just thought, there's no reason why I shouldn't do that. Right. Yeah, no, I just was wondering. You don't take it. It won't do him any good.
Chair, we are ready to start at 4 o'clock. Okay.
Oh, it's 4 o'clock, so I will call this meeting of committee of the whole to order for July the 5th, 2023. And acknowledge that the meeting is taking place on the beautiful field of the nomination. Now, directors, you have the agenda in front of you. Can I please have a motion to approve the agenda as Lennox Brandon discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And you opposed? The motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes, 3.1, minutes of June 7th. Are there any areas of influence? Move the minutes. Approve Brandon Lennox discussion. Seeing discussion, all in favor? And the close carried. There are no delegations and inquiries. Unfinished business is our code of conduct, item 5.1. You have the recommendation before you. Director Lennox, thank you. Discussion. Director Edwards.
So we've been working on this code of conduct for a very long time. I feel like this latest draft really does address all of the concerns we've had and answers the questions we've had. It certainly addresses the small pieces that I was worried about, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you.
It's been quite a mess. I think looking at the history, we started with a code of conduct. I think in the month well ahead of what the provincial government was on before. And we've done some exploring and learning along the way, and we've had workshops, and we've had the advice of the UBCM and other experts. And, certainly given this a once over with a fine-tooth comb, more than once, I guess. And I think it's a great document. It will be useless if we don't all pay attention to the document and try to live the life that's expected here, treat each other with respect and treat the citizens and the residents of the area with respect. If we all do that, then we probably won't have to bring up the code of conduct. And if we do, I think there are ways in there of dealing with any conflict and hopefully resolving them in a positive way. So I support this. I think it's progress, and I hope it passes.
Thank you, Director Dowd. And I like the mediation aspect that's included in this version of the code of conduct in particular. So any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There is no correspondence, therefore no business arising. We're on to report. Excuse me. 3.1, the Lund Waterworks District Receiver. There's a recommendation before you. Is there a mover of Director Lennox and Director Brandon? Discussion.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of work's going on in the background here to get to a solution with the stakeholders. Mr. Day has done a great job in his role, and as the report's very clear about what's going on with him and some timelines on that, and I do appreciate the Local Services Act definitions. And I also appreciate the staff's blatant honesty that are in our capacity, right, and didn't try to take it on, and they've been clear about their recommendation here. So obviously somebody will have to take that over, but I understand the recommendation, and I'm in support of it.
Thank you, Director Lennox. Director Dowd.
You know, I see the staff report here, but I wonder if Mr. Day is stepping down as the receiver. I wonder if he's written a report on what he's done so far, or where his position is, if there's a public report on that, or if the regional district has a report.
Yeah.
You know, so we know about the work that's gone on. I don't know if if any of the directors have seen the report themselves, but I'm curious about what it might say and what the positive or negative impact on the regional district and the people who depend on that service for water would be if we simply don't pick it up.
Yeah.
Through the chair, Mr. Day has been working as the receiver on behalf of the province. So the province has been stick handling this initiative because it is in their lap right now, as the water ID was a creature of them. And there is a report that I know that Director Lennox is privy to, because he was part of the public committee up there looking for ways and means to whittle down the $22 million budget to where it is now. And I'm sure we can get our hands on it. And that is what is in the hands of the province right now. And that is what they are going to be, I would suggest, moving our direction in the very near future.
Director Lennox.
If I can just follow up on that question, because I didn't know if there was a public report or if we had access to it. And I just personally, I would feel more comfortable in knowing more about the situation than less, and what the impacts would be. I really don't understand, from my point of view, about what the potential impact could be on the people who depend on that service to get water out of the taps. And that's a pretty important service to me, that when I turn my tap off, that the water actually continues to come up. Secondary is that it costs me money, and I'm concerned about that. But I really personally like to know that the water is going to keep coming. And if there is no receiver, and you know, where does it go next? And I'm sure there must be a report that looks into all the eventualities of what would go on. I'd like to see that.
Thank you, Director Lennox.
Yeah, and just to add to sort of the current state of affairs, unfortunately, I missed the last public hearing of the advisory committee that sort of presented the latest information to the public, and I think that's the report that the CO is probably referencing. We can get that, and you know, I can ask the advisory committee to give a synopsis of that. I kind of need one as well, because I've been out of that loop. I will say that I'm aware that at least one of our community members has been approached to sort of take on that role in Mr. Day's absence. And I hope I've had discussions with that person, and I hope that they take on the role to kind of push it through to the end zone. So what I can say is that there's from the initial engineering assessment and a very high cost, we've kind of knocked that down to at least a half of the initial budget, which is much more reasonable. It's been presented to the community in all of these different phases, and I got to say, it's an interesting study in ratepayers, because there's very little public involvement at those meetings. The advisory committee is all there. If we're not out of town like I was, and there's only 3 or 4 folks of the 124 users that attended even the last one with the newest proposal. That being said, we do our best to keep educating people, but I understand this recommendation, and it is time for someone else to take on that role.
And will that report that you're referencing, will that come to this board?
That's a good question. You know, we've had grant funding for different studies and reports, and so I think it's probably appropriate to come to the board. I'll work with staff on that to do so.
Okay, thank you. Director Elliott next.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a couple of questions, and George Doubt's points I echo those. I want to know what the impact of this decision here that we're contemplating is on the users of water in Lund, and I don't understand that. So I've read in the report where if things dissolve, it becomes the responsibility of the regional district by default. I've also read in here that the costs of being the receiver are borne by the Lund Finances and Conversion Grant, and I'm not entirely sure I know what that is. So could someone tell me what the Lund Finances and Conversion Grant is, and is that come through the regional district at all? And do we lose control of how much is spent on being the receiver if someone else is doing it? Some of those things I don't understand, and this report doesn't answer that for me.
Thank you, CA.
Through the chair. As I mentioned before, Lund Waterworks is a creature of the province. So this is in their bailiwick. This is all an entity to themselves until such time that they use their influence and say, you've got a gift. So we're not really concerned about their finances. We couldn't do anything about their finances.
So when you say there, you mean the Lund
Waterworks district.
And when you say the Lund Finances and Conversion Grants are from that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all within the province and the Lund Waterworks.
Okay.
Now, the only thing that we have facilitated is money has flowed through us to them. The grants.
Right. So the piece of legislation that talks about if all of that dissolves, we end up with it. Is it in our best interests to maybe be more involved to try and not have that happen? I'm just asking. I don't know.
Through the chair, there's only two options really. First option was to keep the water ID alive. But they had no trustees or people wanting to step up to take on that role.
Okay.
The only other option is, and it's in their policy manual and it's in legislation, that if a water ID dissolves, which it has, because they have no trustees left, it eventually will end up in the hands of the nearest local government, because the province will not be a purveyor of water forever and ever. Amen.
So that's where it's going to go. We're going to end up with whatever, with that at the end of the day, by default, is what you're saying.
Through the chair, I think that is the inevitable, unless through maybe some unforeseen thing, the water ID resurrects with enough trustees to keep it going on their own.
Okay, and then, okay, so I'm still in favor of getting more information around what Tom Day came to conclusions of and where they're at with that. And so for the question of whether the regional district should become the receiver instead of the province, and the recommendation is no, we shouldn't. I think I'm okay with that, but I'm still worried about the water users and what's happening with them. So that's where I sit right now.
Has there been communication between staff and the province regarding this, and will they be appointing another mediator, receiver, I mean?
Through the chair, the information that we have is they offered it to us. If we don't accept it, then we will look toward maybe a trustees is what they said to me, or select one of the members of their committee that they've got to just shepherd it along until such time. And the other option was to hire a new consultant to shepherd it along. I still think there's a long way to go before this RD would be satisfied with taking over the water ID. We've got a utility acquisition policy. I think we need to be confident that what is being proposed in the report satisfies all of the, short of being orders, all of the encouragement that the local health authority was saying to the water ID that they needed to improve, they needed to correct. I don't think that we want to take over a water ID that is still susceptible to Giardia or Cryptosporidium.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of first time still, Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. A comment and a question. I think I'm in favor of the motion for a couple of reasons. I think despite, I have concerns about the water users making sure their taps keep working. I think that's paramount. But even if we were receiver, that would put us in a limited ability to even help them, even if there was a problem, simply because we don't have a service. We operate by service. And until we have a service, we don't have any way to do something. Like if what is needed is a new pump or some filter system or something, we don't have any way to deal with that until we have a service. So I think we're actually better positioned to not be involved too much, be prepared down the road to create a service when called on by the province, and then be ready to actually make sure that we receive that in a state and make demands, I guess, to the province, ideally, that it be handed over in a state that doesn't completely financially shackle the users through debt that we might have to incur to fix it up. Because once we have a service, then we can do all kinds of stuff with future money. But we want to get the province to do as much as possible to help now. And I guess so. I think that is the right approach. I think it's a good way to forward. My one question though is really specific, which is on page 25. It says they meaning the province, our response by July the 10th, in 3 days. So do we need to do anything to ratify this now, or ratify it by the board later and send it, or will that just happen because this recommendation goes forward, if it goes forward?
Oh, yes, thank you. Through the chair, once you see it on the board agenda, it will have a motion to ratify, because we will need to provide them. I'm fairly certain.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, second round of discussion, Director Doak.
Thank you. So, what we're being asked, and we're being asked by the provincial government, is whether we would like to be the receiver following Mr. Day, or whether we would not. And they want our response by July 10th, which is next week, and well before our next board meeting. Personally, although I've heard from Director Lennox and I've heard from the CAO that some details of what they think is in the report, I haven't seen the report. I don't know what it's about. To my mind, their request for a response by July 10th is something I would recognize as an open door to a discussion. And I would like to propose that staff have a further discussion with the provincial government about what the provincial government is going to do to protect the regional district from costs and staff requirements and all of those things that they might be willing to provide. They won't provide them if no one asks. If the existing receiver is stepping down, they're not going to be asking the provincial government to do that. If we don't ask, we won't be asking. And who knows what the future receiver might do. And that's what the government is suggesting, that they are going to appoint a receiver. So I think there's an opportunity for us to have a discussion with the provincial staff who are involved about solutions to the problem that might keep the regional district financially whole, and may keep the water flowing out of people's taps a little bit longer. That's just my suggestion. I'm quite interested to see what others say, but I don't have enough information to say I think it's a good idea to just say to the province, we're not going to do that.
CAO?
Through the chair, I don't think you need to be worried right now about any RD finances, especially in Area A, because it's up to the province right now to keep that water tap flowing. It's in their lap. They are the ones that have hired the receiver. The July 10 deadline is so that the ministry staffer can put all of the reports together and get all of the signatures required to go to the meeting of cabinet, I believe, in September. Has nothing to do with us. And as far as any negotiations, they told me that all costs associated with being the receiver would be covered through the Lund finances, meaning whatever the equivalent of taxes that they collect and whatever monies that have been flowing through on conversion grant research and investigations. So their money is very, very limited. They don't have a pot of gold to throw in at this. They're just using whatever the current water ID uses as their own operational funding. So I I think we would be wise to stay away from it right now, because I think another thing that everybody is triggered onto is the information regarding the dissolution of a ID. It says that the lieutenant governor and council may by order provide the continuation of a service improvement district and the service of the region district. It's kind of contradictory because they can do it by order. What I say is contradictory is because in the policy manual about a ID of any sort attempting to convert, it says that the two entities, the ID and the regional district, must be in agreement with one another. And until such time that I say, and I think the RD needs to take a position on this, until they can meet our utility acquisition policy, I don't think this RD wants anything to do with that ID yet.
I think that's a decision for the board to make.
Can they not force it upon us?
Mr. Chair, at the end of the day, they have the power if they have the will.
Thank you, Director Lennox.
Yeah, I appreciate your explanation, CEO. Thank you. And I agree. The report that was created was for the advisory committee of the Lund Waterworks Improvement District. So that's where you get that information, is by going to those meetings and attending those. You know, for what it's worth, I agree that a little bit of separation of church and state is a good thing at this point, because it isn't under the purview of the regional district. The 13-page acquisition policy, right? Very detailed, by the way. Appears it was created specifically for something just like this. I supplied that to the committee because it's part of the ongoing work to achieve that cooperation between the two levels of government to then move forward. You know, First Nations, I see some, we've been in direct contact with First Nations repeatedly on this subject, and we're exploring those options. So I guess my point is that we're tackling what's required under legislation, under QRD policy, and trying to do right by the taxpayers. And there's been a recommendation from the receiver. There is no vote, by the way, it's just a receiver. So it's kind of an odd process where he makes a motion and votes on it himself. But those things have all been voted on by the committee, by the receiver, and are in place now. So we're due for the community to make a decision. There also, Tom has reported a very good relationship with the ministry. They're 100% aware of where we are in time, all the work that's ongoing, the policy, the RD. So it's not as fast as we'd like, but right now your opportunity for detailed information is through that advisory committee.
Okay. Thank you, Director Lennox. Any further discussion on the motion before us? Seeing no hands, we will vote. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? The motion is, Director Dowd is opposed. Okay. The motion is carried. There is no new business, so we are on to question period. Are there any questions from anyone who is participating virtually?
Hello, Chair. Thank you very much. It's Golinsky from the Peak here. I'm wondering if anybody knows how much money is owed by the Lund Waterworks District. Well, it's in receivership, so somebody must owe some money somewhere or another along the line.
Through the chair, what receivership means is that their board has dissolved. It doesn't mean the receivership as what you and I know in a public-private business entity. They just don't have any board to continue the operations and ongoing finances. So the receiver is doing that now on behalf of the province, using the same tools that the trustees would have used. So they don't owe anybody any money. They're just clicking along at their own speed with somebody new at the helm instead of a board of trustees.
Through the chair, I thank the CAO for the clarification. That was my question.
Thank you very much, Paul. Okay, so we are now on to the motion for an in-camera session. Would someone like to move this?
Sure, that the committee move in camera and that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91. C, labor relations or other employee relations, and N, the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under provision of the subsection or subsection 2.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Director Lennox, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. We're going in camera. Ready? All right, Esme, are we ready? Okay, well, we're back at committee as normal. There is no rise and report, so we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And yeah.
Hey, Andrew.